Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster and I thought I would do a quick response video for you today. Now a little while back I put up a video asking you guys, my subscribers, just to ask me kind of any questions you had for me, anything you wanted to know. And there were a few responses. There weren't actually too many, so I figured I'd cover all of them, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. So you'll have to bear with me referring to my notes because I had to jot down what everybody has said. But I thought I would start off with you know, kind of the fairly standard one, you know, first name, are you married, where do you live, how long have you been in bushcraft, how do I make a living? So to start with, I'm not going to tell you my first name. I'm going to keep that a little bit of a mystery, not that it's much of one to be fair, but I am married. I live in the southeast of England. I've been bushcrafting really since I was a kid, you know, spending times out in sort of fields and woodlands near where I lived. But I suppose the proper answer would be, let me see, it's got to be coming on for close on to 20 years now since I first started practicing what I now know of as bushcraft, you know, going out overnighters in the woods, you know, making you know, fires, cooking on a fire, that kind of thing. I mean, certainly back then it really was, I had no idea what bushcraft was. It was just something I enjoyed doing. And how do I make a living? So basically I work as what's known as a facilities manager. Basically I look after office buildings on behalf of the people who own them, and manage the services within those office buildings. I'm based up in central London, and look after, let me think, so I look after 10 office blocks at the moment, sort of based all around sort of the West End of London. And you know, it's a living at the end of the day. It's nothing particularly exciting, but it pays the bills and pays for me to buy new shiny bushcraft things. So the next one was what got me into wood carving and what's my favourite wood. So the wood carving actually came as part of my bushcrafting, and I think a lot of people go down this road. You know, I'm sort of sitting out in a campsite, either me and a couple of friends, with my trusty Mora, and decided, you know, I've seen this Ray Mears guy on telly, he's been making spoons and this and that and the other, I'll give it a go. Now my first few attempts were pretty kind of feeble efforts, being honest, but I kind of got the bug quite early on, and I invested in a Mora spoon carving knife, which actually, although I'm a really big advocate of Mora and I really do like their gear, so excuse the dogs out there, guys. Yeah, I really like Mora, but I really dislike their spoon carving knives. Now there are things you can do to them to make them better, but actually, you know, I just don't think they really do that well. And certainly after using other makers' versions, I think there are better ones on the market. So that's what got me into carving, and as I say, you know, I kind of progressed from there to other things, you know, bowls, spatulas, cooksers, those kind of things. And my favourite wood, it's a difficult one because I was working a little while ago on a series on here using some apple wood, which was really lovely to work with, but I am most familiar with birch. And actually birch is also a lovely wood. It's very straight grained, it cuts very easily, generally allows the knife to go where you want it to. So it's a toss up between apple and birch, but I think birch for me, mostly because it's what I have access to most, so I am most familiar with it, definitely my favourite carving wood. What else do we have here? Someone did ask about farrier's knives. Now obviously you've seen me use them before. There are saying that they didn't really get on very well with them. Could I give some tips? I won't do that on this episode because I think that probably deserves an episode by itself. And I am looking at another tool at the moment that is quite similar. And I think maybe I'll do that video and then do maybe a comparison of the two. So bear with me on that. What's your biggest achievement in bushcraft and wood carving? That's a difficult one. Wood carving, I think, would probably be the first time, and I suppose this carries over to both, but the first time I went out for I think it was a weekend trip if memory serves, and I had my knife, I had my axe, and I had a spoon carving knife. and I made my first spoon entirely whilst out in the woods. Yeah, before that I was kind of going out for a day or a weekend, starting making a spoon, and I would take it home with me and finish it off. There's nothing wrong with that, but there was one particular camping trip, God knows how long ago, very long time ago now, where I managed to make a spoon in the course of a few hours in the afternoon, and I was able to use it for eating my dinner with that knife, and that was quite a big achievement in the wood carving for me. It wasn't anything special, it wasn't anything pretty, but it was functional, and I'd made it specifically at that time for that purpose, and that was quite a proud moment for me, if you can call it that. In bushcraft, I mean, God, there's been so many. I think fire lighting's definitely one of them, and I think, for me, achievements in bushcraft happen fairly regularly. You're constantly learning new things. The first time I managed to get a fire going with a ferro rod was a good sense of achievement. First time I got a fire going with flint and steel was also a very nice feeling. I've never managed to do a fire by friction, bow drill, hand drill, that kind of thing, and it's something I am working on. I just haven't got the drive to really push myself to it, and I freely admit that. But I suppose, what else in bushcraft? I suppose really it was going out and just getting out there and doing it. I recall one trip in particular, a very good friend of mine, where we'd gone out. It was October, November time, I think. It was certainly sort of, coming up to winter time. Everything was damp, everything was wet. We had matches and lighters and things with us, but we were struggling to get a fire going even with that. And I remember, I can't remember where I saw it, but there'd been this tip that I think I've done on this channel, where you can find some dead standing wood, split it down to get to the dry wood beneath, and managed to get a fire going in very, very poor conditions with my ferro rod. And that was a huge sense of achievement, in the fact that not only had I not had to resort back to what I sometimes class to as cheating methods, matches and lighters, but especially in those conditions. So what else do we have? Favourite bushcraft and survival knife. Well, this comes in two parts, and I brought them out with me. So I'll bring it up to the camera. This is the first one. You're all going to be familiar with this from my channel. This is my Ramirez bushcraft knife. Without a doubt, my favourite bushcraft knife. Very similar grind to a Mora, very similar shape to a Mora. Obviously, not the cheapest of knives on the market, but it's got very, very good edge retention. It's got a really nice thick square spine on there, and it just feels really, really nice in your hand. Now, again, there is no need to go out and buy a knife like this. Or if you want to buy something custom, there are cheaper alternatives out there. But I bought this fairly early on in my bushcraft career. You could say, slightly naively thinking it was going to be the be-all and the end-all, and it's an absolutely superb knife. But there are others that will do just as good a job. That said, would I not buy it knowing what I know now? Probably not, because I do really, really like it. The second one, and again I'll bring that a bit closer for you, is this one. Now this is my SE6. Lovely, lovely knife, and this is what I would consider a survival knife. It's a big, beefy, really solid blade, and you can do a lot with this. You can batten with it, you can chop with it, you still strike a spark on a ferro rod, and if I was in a survival situation, this is what I would want. I could use this, there'd be nothing wrong with that, but this one, I think it gives you a bit more versatility. It's bigger, it's longer, you can batten through bigger stuff, you can hack and chop with it to create shelter and that kind of thing. If you needed to, you could strap this onto the end of a stick and use it as a spear. And you could do that with the Ramirez as well. but you know, the Raymirs, like all Scandi knives, you know, I'm not saying the edges are particularly fragile, but I certainly wouldn't want to be using that maybe like a spear to try and catch some kind of wild great game and throwing it where it could hit rocks and that kind of thing. You know, this thing, it's pretty bomb proof. You won't get the same you know, fine cutting and especially fine carving out of something like this, but then again, if I'm in a survival situation, I'm not really going to be too fussed about carving myself a spoon to eat with. You know, it's that kind of thing. And where have we got to? Last question, I think. What am I passionate about outside of bushcraft and wood carving? What am I passionate about outside of woodcraft and bushcraft? I used to be really into my motorbiking. I haven't had a bike for a few years now. My last one got stolen from my old house, and I just didn't get around to getting a new one. As I said earlier, you know, I work up in the centre of London, and I'm not a fan of riding around that area. I commute in via train. I did take the motorbike up there a few times, but to be honest, with the width of the roads up there means that you can't really use a motorbike that well up there, because you know, you've got really narrow gaps. Now, I had a fairly nice bike. For the enthusiasts out there, it was a Suzuki GSXR 750. It was a 2005 plate, so you know, it was quite at the time it was quite a new bike. I think it was a year old when I bought it, and you know, that was the kind of bike I was into, and I wasn't really willing to risk sort of, you know, going down the side of two buses, you know, in very narrow conditions. So it was a bit wasted up there, so I would just take it out generally on sunny days. What else am I into? Quite into my Xbox, you know, not so much as I once used to be, but you know, online gaming every now and again, you know, probably 1 or 2 nights a week I'll do that as a bit of a relaxation. Quite recently getting back into my fitness as well, so you know, joined up to a gym last year after a gap of God knows how long, a few years I suppose, and getting quite into that at the moment as well. So in those are the things that I kind of really like. You know, obviously, you know, I tend to be into a lot of things, as you may have guessed by watching this channel. You know, I used to do a lot of shooting. Unfortunately, all of my shooting permissions have dried up where land has been sold off to you know, or farmland and farmhouses have been sold off when the farms weren't doing so well to private owners who have bought it because they like the you know, the wildlife, and they don't want people shooting the rabbits and the squirrels and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've been into. Martial arts, again, not so much as I once was. You would have seen last year, you know, I got back into the sort of the HEMA side of things. Haven't joined up to a club. This is just stuff that I'm doing myself at home, just going through solo drills, that kind of thing. But yeah, real wide and varied amount of interests that I have. And yeah, some of them may make it onto this channel at some point, others might not. So I hope that was a bit of an insight for you guys. I realise I've rambled on for a little bit longer than I intended, but you know, that's me. If there's anything else you want to know, you know, by all means drop me a note in the comments or email me or what have you. But yeah, I hope it's given you a bit of insight into me, who I am and what I do. So next videos will be coming up shortly. Yeah, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And sorry, I've just noticed one other question here. Am I doing a giveaway at 4,000 subs? Short answer is I haven't decided yet. I may well do. I'm not sure. I haven't actually checked recently to see where my subs are. My original plan was to do it at 5,000. So I did one at 2.5, and I was going to do another one at 5. But let me have a think, and I'll come back to you on that. So that's it for today, guys. Comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks, guys.